Hi everybody, I'm Melissa Dillman from Staren Marketing. Today I am guest hosting an episode of AV Smackdown with two of my best AV tweeps, Mark Coxon and Chris Netto. Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing good.
Awesome.
So, this ought to be a lively conversation. This is going to be a live recording of what the three of us tend to do frequently is argue about things within the industry.
We all happen to be in the same place at the same time. How convenient.
How convenient. So the stars have aligned. So I'm going to ask them questions and let's see how we can get this started. Mark, Chris, I believe we left off with AV as a service. All right, hot topic for the show. Where do you think we belong in that realm here at InfoComm 18?
You mean a place where products are being shown and we're talking about AV as a service?
Is anybody really selling it?
A service, I'm sure.
As a service.
I'm sure there are companies out there selling a bunch of AV as a service, but it just happens to be that my buddy here just wrote an article about that. And his interpretation of what AV as a service to me probably made the most sense of any explanation I've heard. Please give your car leasing story.
My car leasing story?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you think, a lot of people in AV have said, well, AV as a service is just a glorified lease. Oh, we're leasing equipment. We've been doing that for years. We're just calling it something different. We're renaming something. And AV as a service actually has a completely different value proposition than just leasing a bunch of equipment. And the analogy I gave is there's, if you think of leasing a car, if you went out and leased a car, you had a BMW 3 Series, you're going to drive a BMW 3 Series for 3 years. You're going to turn it in 3 years, maybe you'll get something else, but you're going to be stuck with that car every day back and forth unless you want to pay an insane amount of money to swap out of that lease and change the actual hardware. Now there's a company called Fare. Fare's linked with Uber in some way, but Fare is this app, and Fare is car as a service. You go on and you pick out the car you want, it gives you a monthly payment, you drive that car. Anytime within 5 days you need let's say I need a truck, all of a sudden I had another kid, I need an SUV. I don't need a BMW 3 Series, I got a baby. I need a minivan. 5 days, drop off, pick up new car, new payment. So you can actually adjust your car based on the features and benefits of the vehicle that you want kind of on the fly. And that's really what AV as a service as a model should be. So right now we may have little pockets of it. I think we have pockets of AV as a service. I know for video teleconferencing, before the soft codec had proliferated, there were people doing teleconferencing as a service where they bought the codecs and equipment and then they would host it. You get so many hours a month and you pay for the hours that you want. And they hosted the infrastructure and then they gave you the logins. And that was a way to do teleconferencing as a service. Now we're doing it through a soft codec instead, which is pretty much teleconferencing as a service. So we see these little pockets of it, but what the point is that an AV as a service model would have components in a room, obviously. You can have minimum components. People hate when I say minimum components because they think I'm minimizing the components. I'm not minimizing them. What I'm saying is you have to have a speaker to move air. Got to hear something. I got to have a microphone to pick up voice. Got to have that if I'm going to have any type of two-way conversation offsite. I have to have some type of display. It could be a projector, could be a heads-up display, could be a screen, could be a contact with VR on top of it. Whatever, I got to somehow show content. And the only other minimum component really is a camera to pick up imagery from the room. Everything else can move into a software space. And we're seeing that. We're seeing our traditional DSPs move into a software space. We're seeing our codecs move into a software space. We're seeing control systems move into a software space. So as we have all these things move out, then we just say, well, how do I just activate these minimum devices in different ways depending on the way the user wants to use them?
Okay, so Chris, tell me, what's your take on this?
Well, personally, I found that his explanation was the best because it really becomes not about the brand. You're not, in your car example, you specifically said a BMW 3 Series right away. We had this luxury brand in our head because that's what BMW comes for. I think within that AV the service, I think it becomes almost it's not a brand specific choice unless the integrator or whoever's providing that service wants to offer a X, Y, or Z solution that has certain brand names. I think when this conversation, because every conversation we have always ends up with the ultimate good enough conversation. When you get to that good enough conversation, you're going to hear, trust us, we'll get you stuff. And that stuff will get you a value package. And to be honest with you, if in the IT space, if we're delivering as a service for video conferencing or for conference room technology, I think that the IT guys are more comfortable with what's happening on the back end in their servers with the name brand stuff that they want. They could care less what that camera, speaker, display color is. I mean, well, not display color, but display is. I think that they're almost going to start commoditizing that in a way that's going to be, kind of bizarre for people that are used to walking into a space and looking for a particular type of speakers and stuff like that. Because we look for quality, but we're tech heads. We love quality. That's why it's funny that you mentioned cars, because when I go car shopping, I obviously there's certain things that I want in a car. I'd like to have a 7-seater, and I like to have the ability to have Bluetooth. That's not really car, but Bluetooth is there. I look for certain gadgets in there that's going to make my life easier because I am a tech head. I want the sound. I want the better sound system. The whole car industry took a hit because of sound systems, because the cars themselves started coming with better sound systems. So you're factoring that. The funny thing is that when I hit my lease, that name brand car system, speaker system that's in there, or sound system, is part of that lease. I'm paying for that over the course of God knows how. I could have just went out and bought that stuff. It's kind of weird, but anyway.
Okay, so I have a couple of thoughts here. One is I want to talk to your wife about this mystery baby that you just had. I don't know if she's in the loop on it, but okay, we'll get to that.
Minivan Mark.
Here's a question for you, because what about who's paying for this? So I get the service, that's great. But somebody has to buy the gear up front. So who's going to float that loan? Is that going to be the manufacturer going to create new price structures for integrators? Is the integrator going to float it? Where is the initial buy? Where does that come from? I realize there's profit at the end, but who's going to make the initial buy?
And that's, that is one of the obstacles is to AV as a service is those minimum components still do have to be in the room. And if you're not purchasing those as part of a system, and those are things that can be fluid as you need to change roomscapes and things like that, that you do have to have a partner or some way that you're facilitating that hardware and moving from CapEx to OpEx. I see it really as something where it may very well be a manufacturer play. We're seeing this even with, you hear, murmurings of Ford and some of these guys go back to cars, of parking cars and letting people use them, right? That industry is looking at that. Is there an investment that we make in having automated cars or in having car as a service where you have something that people can pick up with an app, and we place these out instead of a traditional dealership model, and they're getting paid per use? It's one of those things where the industry really has to look and say, if we don't do this, how much of this are we going to sell? Right? So, how many more of these are we going to sell if we don't start to make it accessible and fluid and easy for somebody to switch things back and forth? It is a hard conversation. I think some of the bigger integrators could potentially do it. The real thing is that the leasing mechanism could, in fact, play a role in AV as a service on the back end to the person providing the service themselves. So I don't have to come out of pocket, cash flow, positive for all of this gear. I, as an integrator, lease all this equipment through a financing vehicle, and then I have my customers paying a monthly rate that's above that, and now I can move my fleet of equipment where I need to based on AV as a service. So leasing may be part of the mechanism to fund it, but it's way more than a lease from the end user perspective.
I want to pose questions to both of you because you're both very
I'm the
smart
host.
But
I don't know where you think you get to host. Go ahead.
No, I have a question regarding that. Is that I was a former technology end user on site with the end users themselves, and I could go ahead and outfit a floor with 2 video conference rooms, 2 presentation rooms. Presentation rooms are 2 6-person conference rooms with a 55-inch monitor, wireless collaboration device on the table, and call it a day. There's 4 conference rooms on the floor. And that could have been for the accounting group, who also had a wing or a division that was in Duluth, Georgia, for example. All right. That group is now transitioned out of there because they need to move to a different building because accounting is now part of a different organization or getting put under a different wing. The new occupants coming into that floor. AV as a service now helps us in that sense, in that car analogy. So now the next group that's coming in is R&D, right? They don't need those 2 presentation rooms. They need 4 video conference rooms now, right? So the fluidity of this is that you can take those rooms, pop them out, put in video conferencing. You increase or decrease the cost based on whatever the room type is. For AV companies, they need to start looking at it as a catalog of service. And maybe there may be some comfort in the fact that they can go back to leaving it at the jack. Because for many years, the responsibility ended at the jack. Because you're now just, the network is not going to change, right? You're still going to have the transport there. You're just now reconfiguring the space.
Well, the interesting thing that you just mentioned, and it drew something out from my residential days. When you move, DirecTV has a satellite mover program, right?
You leave the
But
TV.
the satellite mover program, you leave the dish.
Yeah.
They bring you a new dish, you take your box. And the reason they leave the dish is because the dish is an opening to the door of that home for the next person that comes in. The dish is there. I know the address, I know the dish is on the house. This is a potential customer. If you think of this from like an integrator perspective, especially smart integrators that go out and they start working with not just an individual customer, but maybe they work with a CB Richard Ellis or a Jones Lang LaSalle. And they are the technology company for the building. Those tenants leave. Now they have the list of what's in that space. They know the infrastructure in the building, and now all of a sudden they have access to a new tenant. And now they can use that service model instead of losing a customer from that space, and now they're not getting X amount of dollars a month for this space in the AV. Now they have access to go in there and start to reconfigure that to the needs of someone else. And so you really have this situation, like Chris said, not only within a single organization, but even across organizations or tenants. If you're partnering with the right type of folks, you do that. I'll tell you, one of the most popular things we ever did as an integrator on the AV side with residential was a technology evaluation. So we would go to real estate agents that were trying to sell homes. And we say, hey, guess what? We'd love an introduction to whoever buys this house, but in order to facilitate that, this is what we're going to give you. We'll come in, we'll tell you what kind of wiring's in the house, if it's prepped for Wi-Fi, if you got structured cabling, we'll catalog if the home theater system works, we'll tell you how many rooms of audio you have and where that goes back to, and we'll give you that as part of your package that you can write up in your MLS listing or in your home sale package, so that when you have this buyer that's like, well, yeah, but I have all this stuff in my house, they're like, oh yeah, we already had somebody come in and evaluate all these speakers work, this works, this is here, the security system's ready to go. And hey, by the way, when you move in, if you need any help getting it hooked up, here's their card, right?
Okay, so that brings me to a thought. Does this open the door then to manufacturers going direct to the end user? Okay, so now that they're the ones, let's say they're the ones carrying the load for the cost. They're the ones who can handle the burden of the change of equipment. They're the ones who have access to repurpose it. Do we open the door then for them to go direct?
I don't see that. I think that it's going to be more through still with distribution and reps. But what it does do is it builds a relationship for the manufacturer to be in touch with the customer. Simply because there's going to be questions that the manufacturer can answer, or can maybe, if a product needs to be adjusted, it's to the benefit of the manufacturer to be hearing from the customer directly. But it doesn't necessarily mean they have to sell directly to the customer.
But do you remember back in early VTC?
Yes.
Early VTC, you took it to the provider, and what'd they do?
I mean, I've been in the business since '98. That's hard. That was lessons learned.
Right.
And I was an installer for a small video conferencing company.
But aren't we opening the door to the same thing?
You could, man.
Isn't that door always open though?
It's always there.
I mean, if you're sitting there and you have a manufacturer that, they call this disintermediation. I heard this really fancy word for this. Eliminating the
Where's my
$20
phone
word,
to Google?
Disintermediation. So eliminating those middle steps between the product and the person who's using the product. But the problem is there's some value add in between the way. So is the reason that people still buy stuff from AV companies, and I get this all the time. I would be in meetings and people say, Mark, I can buy that TV at Best Buy. I saw it yesterday for $2,500. And I'd say, great, why didn't you buy it? Why are we here? I must offer something, or there must be some question of what I offer that's going to add some value to this, that you didn't just buy it and do it on your own. We're still having this meeting. You're not wasting your time with me because you don't think I add value to the chain. So does the manufacturer have the ability, do they want to become a service and installation arm?
Does the desktop computer manufacturer really, does it matter that they're going to, say, an HP, for example, to buy the monitors, or if they're buying from, I guess it would be to the shop that sells the HP. But I don't know. I don't think the technology that we deal with, you sort of need a layer. You need to have that interaction and to have that. You need to have the support, and a lot of this comes down to anything going back to the AV as a service question. We didn't talk about the support layer that comes with it, right? In order to sell the equipment, and not to sell the equipment, but to do the product of AV as a service, delivering a service of equipment and swapping it out, there's a component piece to the service side of this, right? It's going to be required on the integrator side to step up, because the first person who answers the phone, right, is got to be knowledgeable, right? If you're selling that, it will raise the education question, which I know that you're a forte, but the first person, that first line of defense now in the company cannot be a gatekeeper. It has to be a gateway, right? They got to be able to get in, and they need to move to who's going to answer the question, because you're paying a monthly service, right, to have that equipment. So the value that we provide is that we answer the phone and we do that. We do not want to get into 800 numbers and forever on hold, because as you know, we don't have much of a, we don't have long time to response time. As a former guy who spent time on site, an IT organization can respond to a problem within a couple hours, and it was accepted. That was part of their SLA. I had a 15-minute SLA on a broom problem, and I had to run across campus, and last time I checked, I'm not in shape. That hurt. It was painful, but I had to do it. Right. So those calls justified getting technicians and zoning off campuses, because we had if you're going to give me a 15-minute SLA as a tech manager, I need bodies that can handle the thing. And it wasn't just a body that's going to walk into in the old days where they would go and turn something on or reboot, because that's the ultimate, back end. If a call fails, a video conference call fails, I need a technician who's smart enough to at least walk into the space and go, we're not going to keep this meeting down. We're going to put it on a video call. I'm going to take care of this on the back end. There's people working on it, resolving the problem. It could be a network issue. It could be an equipment issue. Most likely, whatever the case is, we'll get them up on the least common denominator, which is your audio, and you're going to have your meeting. I will take a hit as a tech manager at the time for them not being able to do video conference. But you know what? They were still sharing via their computers, and they still had audio. At the very least, that's what they needed. Well, that was good enough.
And I think that raises. I think one thing you said.
I'm throwing him out of here if he says it again.
Raises another point about that is let's say I'm XYZ display manufacturer, and I sell my display direct to the customer as a service, and the customer has a problem in their room because the audio is not coming through. They don't want to call 6 different numbers. From a customer side, would you want it to drive that way? You know what I mean? They don't want 6 different. They don't want to have to know I have to call this number for the display, and then if I have speakers, I have to call this number, and I have to call this number. So I don't know that the customer, even if the manufacturer wanted to do that, the value story of the integrator is always like it has been. Sorry, the one throat to choke, right? Like, hey, I'm the guy you call when you have technology problems in this room. This is our service level agreement. This is how much you're paying per month per that agreement, and we will have, like you said, level 2 tech support on the phone to make sure these things get done, and a way to resolve those remotely.
Okay, so let's roll back here a minute, because like you said, I've spent a little time in education. Okay, I've trained a couple of people. Here recently I've been training some big Fortune 500 companies.
Yep.
Notice I said big Fortune 500 companies. I did not say integrators. The big companies, the small companies are getting very educated. The model I'm seeing right now is the integrator works with them and helps with design. They might prefab the equipment, but then they hand it over, and the team of tech specialists for the Fortune 500s install it themselves. And then perhaps the integrator comes in and does a fine tune. Is that a model we're moving towards? I mean, if you look at the classes here at Infocom, were they well attended? I don't think we can tell, because we don't have the stats. They're on the other side of the universe. But it was too long of a walk, and it's too hot. But
isn't that what, like, the old, back in the day, the computer companies used to do? You used to order a chassis, and then you would say, I need an upgrade. I want the video card to be upgraded. I need a little bit of extra memory. You put it all together. Then a couple weeks later, here comes your box, and it's all said and done. It's all wired up. Yeah, I am. It's all said and done. All you had to do really is plug in your speakers and your microphone and whatever you were doing at the time. Is that any different? Is that the end user? Is that where you're going with that? That the end user's just basically connecting cables and making it work? Because we also are now seeing a lot of out-of-the-box solutions. Are you talking about that, or are you talking about custom rooms?
Custom rooms.
Custom rooms. Well, in that case, I believe that a smart, educated end user is our biggest ally as opposed to our negative.
And I'm seeing a lot of them.
I got my CTS as an end user. I had time to take that. You know, it was very difficult as an integrator. You know, you're constant on the move. You're installing, you're pulling cable, you're doing wire. When am I supposed to take those classes? I took complete advantage of it, and I would encourage anybody to do the same. If you're a tech manager, take whatever classes, certifications you can, right? Because you have that time. I spent a lot of time waiting outside a conference room to get specs on the room or to do a site survey of the room because it was going to be upgraded, but I needed to get the information. Ironically, I couldn't find CADs for the table. I couldn't, you know, we had CADs for the space, but the table, the furniture didn't come with CADs. Not that the engineers, you know, that's what the engineers needed to do mic placement. You know, what type of lights were in there? What was the light levels? These are things that I was doing. But in the meantime, I couldn't get into the rooms, you know? So for me, I took those classes. What was great is by the time I walked in there, you know, I already studied, you know, on what proper light would be for a, you know, for a video conference room or that space. So I believe that the educated, hands-on AV tech is our best, is our not an adversary, but definitely a complement to what we do. I don't think necessarily it's a bad thing.
Well, I think I would agree with that in a way, and I think this is the thing, is that, you know, a lot of times we go in and the person that isn't educated is the person who doesn't understand why you can't just do what they want to do without the extra stuff.
Right.
Right? Right? Like somebody made mention of the biggest AV, you know, the biggest thing that the teachers want still is just a VGA port and a whiteboard. But then you said on the other breath, they say, well, I just want everything to turn on. But that's an uneducated client. They know what they want to do in the ease, then they know the other stuff they want to do, but they only want to buy these two things.
Right.
That's a very hard situation to navigate. What Chris is talking about and what you're talking about with this Fortune 500 client, the great part about that is they know exactly what the compromises are going to be when they start to value engineer something out, what they're going to lose and what they're going to gain. They understand the value there, and I don't see it as a total bad thing. I think, because, and I'll tell you this, I think there's, and Chris and I have talked about this before, I think we're going to see the industry already start to go towards SEAL Team 6s anyway. You're going to have specialty companies that do specialty things. They're going to do their rooms, and then all of a sudden they're going to have a movie theater. They're going to need some DCI guys that know how to do Aura 3D, right? They're going to need that because their guys aren't going to know that part, and they're really going to want that done right? So you're going to have this SEAL Team 6, and you're going to have stuff they don't want to do, like cabling and those type of things. And they're going to say, well, what happens to all these middle integrators? Where are they going to go work? You know where they're going to go work? They're going to work for your Fortune 500 company because they're hiring techs like crazy and training them, right? So it doesn't decrease the size of the industry. It changes who you get your paycheck from, right? So maybe if you worked for a middle integrator that was used to doing really, you know, structured, small, you know, kind of medium-sized conference rooms, 1, 2, 3, and now all of a sudden they're starting to take those in-house. Somebody's still putting them in. You just got to make sure you go get your job application over there because your customer just decided to start hiring in-house. And I don't know the number of Fortune 500 companies that have picked off their main guy from their integrator and brought them in-house as their tech people. I know a guy at a fruit company that did that. I know a guy at an alphabet soup company that did that. I know guys that are in those positions that were the main guy from the integrator, and then that started there. So it's not a bad thing for our industry. It just means that we're becoming more of the corporate structure. We're no longer the little stepchild anymore. Now all of a sudden we're the guys that they want in the company full time, sitting on staff, doing what they need to do.
And I'll add to that. You mentioned value engineering, which is another phrase that I'm deathly afraid of, because when people that are not familiar with the way things are supposed to work start value engineering, they just start ripping out parts. Like, what do we need this for? What do we need that for? Having an educated customer on the other end that, you know, maybe you don't want to get rid of audio conferencing. Audio conferencing in conference rooms in design space was one of the first things that got popped out. Just put a phone on the table because it was easy. The quality of that phone needed to be stepped up.
But was it good enough?
It was unfortunately good enough. But the problem there was it was good enough until the final user ended up doing it. And yes, you can make phone calls out of it, and yes, everybody knows what a keypad is, right? But it wasn't integrated into that camera. Now you're counting on the audio coming out of that to go through your microphone on a little webcam because you already value engineered video conferencing out of the space, but you still needed to have collaborative space. So now you have this phone, and it wasn't the best phone, but it was the available phone. And that's the problem. So the educated customer is going to say, you know what, a handset's not going to work. Maybe we need to go to a conferencing phone. And if we can go a little better, maybe they can present something a little bit more of an integrated, hey, if we're spending this money on this type of phone, why aren't we looking at an all-in-one, walk out onto the show floor, everybody's got an all-in-one device. Soundbar, camera, UC integrated thing to a table. That's hot. That's what people want to talk about right now because that is simple, as easy as you can make it. But that is a result. Having those things is a result of value engineering because you can't, the great thing about those is you can't take away the audio conferencing. The audio conferencing is part of those little things, right? So having that, giving it wireless, giving it a camera, that's good or better, right? Maybe you have the ability to push a little more now. Your display doesn't have to necessarily be 4K. Maybe 1080p is enough, right? And most people right now, tell me who's pushing 4K out of their laptop, right? With that VGA connection. Come on.
VGA. No.
VGA.
Some of us are on Macs, I'm just saying, but whatever. We'll get you there someday.
Okay, one day I'll learn about that.
All right, so one last question. This was a hot one that the three of us have debated relentlessly. So in my booth placement where I've been at the show all week, there is an incredible experience. There's a dark room that is sensory deprivation that you can go in and solve problems, and there's swings, and you can go up as groups and solve a problem. You don't get to come down till you do, right? It's all around design think. We've talked about this.
Yep.
Infocom obviously invested a lot of money in presenting this year. And we've talked about everybody wants an experience.
Yeah.
I know as a distributor, as someone exhibiting, the amount of space, the cost of putting that group there was pretty high.
Yeah.
And everybody said they wanted an experience.
Yeah.
There's not been a line around the building for it. So what happened? This is an awesome experience. Where are all those people that wanted the experience?
I'll give a one-word answer. I think it may be hesitation or a fear. They're going to look at that and go, old school mindset. Still, I don't have time for that. I'm here to see product. That's probably the one thing. A fear of if I go on there and that thing takes longer, what?
Well, I'm sure it's timed. I'm sure they won't really keep you up there, Chris. But
I'm scared of heights, so that's not going to happen.
They should send the three of us up there.
No, they shouldn't. I will go. I'll take pictures of you.
I have a different thought on that, and I think it's something cool, but I think it's experience for experience sake.
Forced experience.
Forced experience.
What's the benefit to the user when they leave?
Well, I think it's applying. Let's assume it's applying the knowledge you gained within that very small group of people who got to attend the.
But what problem
program.
are they solving?
Yeah.
Are they solving a business problem for an integrator? See, this is the thing. If you could make the problem solving relevant to the persons that there, then maybe they step out of their comfort zone and try something different.
Yeah.
If you think about businesses, one of the reasons corporate retreats work so well is because you get people out of the office where there's this hierarchy and one guy sits at the head of the table and the other guy's here and that guy wears a tie and these guys wear polo shirts and this guy's down that hall where you don't need a key card and this guy's in the ivory tower up here. There's things that people won't say in that environment. There are rules that they follow that aren't written down, but they do it because that's the way the culture of that company is. And so the reason that corporate retreats and stuff like that work so well is you get people out of those comfort zones doing things in a different space where you break down all those barriers. So if you're going to do an experience, right? If you're going to do an experience like that and you want people to participate, the carrot has to be good. And then all of a sudden when they get in there and they start thinking they do this thing and they did something different than they did before and they got this piece of knowledge out of it that was really valuable, then they start to think, okay, now how do I start to connect dots with my customers to say, you know what, maybe this isn't the right way for you guys to meet. Yeah. Maybe this isn't the right way for you guys to present. Because when I did this thing differently, all of a sudden I got a different result in 15 minutes in an experience that I've been trying to get for 10 years that I never got sitting in the office thinking about it. Yeah. So I think it's the carrot. You have to have a good workshop. Then you put people in the environment and show them that environment created their outcome.
There's your outcome.
Now all of a sudden they're excited about it.
Yeah.
It looked fantastic. I hope more people check it out. I can't go in it because, you know, there's only 3 women in the industry, and obviously they'd know that it was me talking, right? So it's hard for me to hide my voice. But anyway, guys, Chris, Mark, thank you for letting me come co-host.
Thanks for keeping us in line.
This is a lot of fun. And this has been AV Smackdown at InfoComm 18. Thanks, guys.